Hi everybody, this is Diana in LA and Cary in the UK, and we're here to talk about this week's stars. Welcome to our weekly reading where we explore all things astrological. From our two different points of view in two different locations in the world, we bring to you a unique astrological perspective on what is happening right now across the globe. So here we go. Last week was a doozy. We went through so much constriction and breaking down, and here we are in another week of similar energies, and it tightens even more as we near the new moon. Wednesday and Thursday is the new moon. 2:06 p.m. in Los Angeles, 10:06 p.m. in England, in London. And so, how are you all doing with all of this? Where are these energies concentrating in your life? Look at your chart and see. We're looking at the stellium in Aquarius, which has Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. The moon will be there too, all squaring still Mars and Uranus in Taurus. So how are you all doing out there? And how are you doing, Cary, on your side of the world?
Well, we're being affected very strongly by the stellium in Aquarius. You know, when you get a stellium like that, the impact that it has on the other planets are quite incredible. So at this moment, where it's squaring Mars and Uranus in the UK, in the UK's chart, the UK actually has Mars at 11 degrees Taurus. So Mars and Uranus are virtually conjuncting the UK's Mars, which is trining the UK's Sun, which is good. But the conjunction to Mars and the challenge from the stellium to the UK's Mars makes it a very challenging time. And in the background, you've still got the Saturn square Uranus.
Right, and I just want to explain a little bit more about what a stellium even is. There is a group of planets in one place and a group in another, right? And then they create a relationship. Well, it's enough to just have one planet and one planet creating a relationship. It's a very different thing when it's 5 planets and 2 planets. You can feel how much more compounding the energies are as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 planets come tighter and tighter together and then making an aspect, and in this case, a square. So what do you have in those degrees, right? Between, let's say, 5 degrees Aquarius and 18 degrees Aquarius. If you have planets in there, you are feeling this. And then it's squaring kind of the same range, 5 degrees to 17, 18 degrees in Taurus. So all the places that you can be in relationship to that by sextile, by trine, by conjunction, something right on top of it too, or by square or opposition, of course, which is a lot of signs, right? You're going to be affected by this, and it would create that compounding concentrative energy where the focus gets very, very tight in a kind of relationship. For the world, it's a square relationship. In your chart, it might not be. Well, you'll be feeling the square. It will be a square in your chart, but it might not be affecting your chart directly. So chances are, though, it is. And so you know what your subjects are. The world knows what its subjects are because we're all working on them right now.
One person who is being challenged at this time is the president, because the president has a stellium in Scorpio in his 12th house, which makes him very philosophical, deep thinker. Don't get to see who he really is by his sun sign. But he's got 4 fast planets in that 12th house. One of them is Mars, and that is at 12 degrees Scorpio. So the stellium at the moment is squaring the president's Mars, which is making negotiations very difficult for him because it's a Mercury retrograde as well. So it's not easy going for him either, because he's trying to change the dynamic of the country during extremely challenging times.
At a time when there's so much division inside the government, he can't bridge the gap. He's really struggling to try to bridge the gap. But it is even polarizing further, at least from what I can see.
In the background of what's happening at the moment is this square of Saturn to Uranus. And it's challenging everything. It's challenging the very fabric of our society, both in the United States, both in the UK, and in the world as well. So in the background, there's lots and lots of changes which are related to this coronavirus. And the changes could be economic, the changes can be political, and the changes can be environmental. But there's going to be lots of unusual communication. For example, in the UK, we're being inundated with virus vaccines, which is a good thing. But there's lots of contradictory communication on these things. And where does that come from? Because within that stellium, which is challenging the UK's Mars, is making communication very difficult because you've got the Mercury retrograde there, and in the background, with the flavour of those two massive planets changing the fabric of our society, they are compounding all these different actions and making life very different and very unpredictable, because our government has to keep changing all the time because they don't know, and it's not their fault, how to approach all these different variants of viruses which are affecting us, and they're coming up with all these different things which are affecting the fabric of our society.
And that's a good way to talk about the energies right now, because what's happening is you're looking over there solving this problem while this problem is going whoop, whoop, whoop over here. And then we look over here and then there's another problem over there. That is very much these energies of Saturn square Uranus, of things that are breaking down the system from the inside. And if you look away for a moment, there's a new subject, and all of these subjects need to be addressed.
There are, and they are being addressed in a very robust way, because you've got that dynamic of Mars squaring a stellium. So Mercury, Mars are squaring each other exact on Wednesday. So Wednesday expects some kind of very important communication which will make people think. It'll be very unusual.
So all week long, we're getting informations that are surprising. Even though, it's interesting when you have an exact conjunction, like we're going to be having all week. All different planets are making all kinds of exact conjunctions this week, one after another, because of the stellium, right? Because there's so many, it's hard to even pull out and distinctly say, this is for this is for that, because it's sort of pandemonium out there right now. Every subject's up, and if it's not one thing, it's another, you see? And so what happens with that is as a planet is fired or triggered off by another planet, and there's another one right next to it and another one right next to it, they're going like ricocheting off each other like a pinball machine. And so that's why it's so intense right now.
Another reason for that is that Uranus rules Aquarius. So Uranus is, the flavour of Uranus at this moment is flavouring that stellium. And it's squaring that stellium, so it's unpredictability. So it's change, and it's going to be like that for the next few months. So, for example, on Wednesday, if you're an Aquarian, it'll be the most fantastic day. You'll be dancing in the moonlight, because it's just one of those days. You've got Mercury conjunct Venus, conjunct Jupiter. That's a lovely aspect to have on that day. So all Aquarians will feel that. And it could be quite unusual, depending what degree your sun sign is, for example. What's the dynamic of Uranus to that? So it's going to be a nice time for Aquarians, but a very challenging times for Scorpions, for Leos, and for Taurians.
And even though maybe they're feeling a little freer, they're still experiencing this square. There's nobody getting out of this. This whole last year and this year now, we're all getting squeezed. And even though Aquarians might like the stellium sitting on their suns, it is still in a square relationship. And so energy excitement, creativity, you might write a book over the weekend. Something like that, right? Where you're just super stimulated, but also consternated, frustrated energy, all squaring Mars and squaring Uranus. So it's really a tough time, but it's also a creative time. And I love to remind us all of that, because sometimes it's the tension that extrudes from us our more creative answers. When we're complacent and feeling fine, we're not necessarily that creative, or we're less creative. And when things kind of push comes to shove, we start kind of coming out with new solutions. And that's kind of exciting to think about. So what are you making these days in your life? What are you creating in your own experience, I wonder? Especially as we come to the new moon now, because here we come to the new moon, and as difficult as that day might be, it's still a new moon, and it's still Aquarius. It'll be 23 degrees, 17 Aquarius. So these are about changings. What is changing in your life? What are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to receive? Look at these things as we hit the new moon this Thursday. It's at 2:06 p.m. here in Los Angeles, so 10 p.m. in London, for instance, and you can check where you are around the world to find your time. But it's that day, basically. You're going to feel that new moon energy, this sort of thrust coming through you of wanting to express something newly. Even though there's some tension to it, that's part of maybe how it can be born.
There is another aspect between two planets which is having a profound effect at the moment, and that is Neptune and Mars, because they're sextiling each other. So while you've got all this activity from the stellium to Mars, it's kind of freed up with an idealistic feel to it, if that makes sense. So, for example, Uranus about creativity, you've got all those planets in Aquarius, that's a huge burst of creativity because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. There's a very idealistic energy behind all this, and a bit of optimism too, that everything's going to be all right.
As you were speaking, I was thinking, who will be our spokesperson? Who will be our visionary? Maybe it'll be you, in the way that you write something, a poem you write, a book you write, a song you write or sing, or an action you do, or a company you start. The whole game board is moving. Where will you be? Where do you find yourself? These are very changing times. These are exciting times. We will look back at this and have so many stories to tell about what happened in 2020 and 2021, because our world's going to look different when we're done with this, and it'll be better. And who will be our spokespeople? And they're starting to arise, right? Like Amanda Gorman, the beautiful poet who spoke at the United States presidential inauguration, or Greta Thunberg, who is speaking for the ones that cannot speak for themselves, our own planet. I wonder who will be the next voice. Maybe it'll be a woman.
Maybe it could be Kamala Harris, who's a heartbeat away from the presidency. You don't know, but it's going to be something very unusual and very unexpected over the next few months.
Yes, and so we will leave it at that for this very intense week coming. And I'm reminding you, use these energies at this new moon as intense as it's going to be. Use those energies. What creative form will come out of you? What kind of expression can be shaped by these energies of what is changing in our world? And so we'll see you next week with another Astrocast. And if you're enjoying these broadcasts, we hope you will share them and like them and subscribe.
Stay safe, everyone. Take care.